This video is 7 lesser known keyboard shortcuts for common programs you should be using. So the first one I'm going to show you has to do with web browsers. So I'm in Edge, you could be in any of the other common browsers, it doesn't really matter. And I've opened up some tabs that are all basically related to our business, so I can just show you how this keyboard shortcut works. So as you know, the more of these tabs you have open, if I kept pressing plus, these would all start to get smaller and smaller and smaller, and eventually sometimes all you see is the little icon up here that people have set for their website. So sometimes what happens is you go to close something and then you realize you just closed the wrong thing, and or you're not even sure what you just closed. And that could be a problem if it's something, say, you opened a while back and you were planning to do research, or you want to come back to it, or whatever the reason was that you kept it, but now you don't have it and you don't even remember where it was or how you found it. So I'm going to close some of these tabs, not the entire browser. That is super important. If I were to close this window here, this keyboard shortcut will not work. So you have to have at least one still open. I'm going to use Ctrl, Shift, and T. And one at a time, as I do this over and over, I just did it 4 times for the 4 tabs, it will reopen the tabs that I had closed. Now if I close this one here and I do it again, it's going to bring it back, and it even puts it back in the same place that it was. So again, this works as long as you don't close the entire window. As soon as you close the entire window, this is not available to you. So it's really helpful for when you have like a lot of tabs open, you close something by accident, or you close something and you're not even sure what it was, or you close something and then you realize, oh, I really still needed something from that. And that happens to me all the time. So Control Shift T, that's how you get those back. The next thing is on multiple applications. So this is a recipe that I just copy and pasted into Word, and I'm going to go in here and I'm going to cut some things out. I'm going to say Control, just remove them from the document, and then I'm going to make some changes. And I say, oh, okay, I want this in red, and I want this background highlighted in yellow. Whatever, right? And these are silly changes, but if you were actually working in a document or an Excel spreadsheet and you're making changes and then you realized maybe you made a mistake or you wanted to undo something, most of you know how to do that. It's just Ctrl Z, which is pretty easy. And I can do this one at a time. You'll see all the things come back. But then maybe I made a mistake and I had created something or done something that was creative. I wrote a paragraph that was creative, or I changed an image, or whatever the thing was. I did a formula in Excel that would be hard to replicate. Then there's a way to bring it back. So if you make too many changes, you can do Control Y, and it'll redo the things you had done. So it's basically the opposite of undo. So if you do something and then you don't like it, you can undo it with Control Z. But then say you did something and you were undoing to get back to something, but you went too far, or you wanted to put something back, you undid it by accident, then use Control Y will actually put it back. So that's kind of a cool way to undo an undo, for lack of a better way to say that. Another thing you can do is you can paste without formatting. So there's a couple ways to do this. Some places Control Shift V works, and other times you have to do Control Alt V. So say I was on the internet. Let me go back to my internet page here, and say I wanted to copy this and do Control C into my recipe, which doesn't make any sense at all, but just for fun. If I paste it, it ends up looking like this. Oh, and apparently I have a typo in my blog. That's pretty fun. Anyway, so the another way you could do that, I'm going to press Enter, and I'm going to copy this again. And I'm going to do Control C. I'm going to go back to Word, and this time I'm going to do Control Alt V. And it's going to come up and it's going to say what kind of format. So the default is HTML format, and I don't want that. I'm going to say unformatted and paste, and as soon as I do that, this now looks the exact same as the document that it landed in. So instead of bringing over what it's bringing over, the sizing and stuff it's bringing over from over here, which this could be background colors, it could be anything, it actually will paste it in without the formatting, and then it basically absorbs the formatting for the document you're pasting it into. So that can be really handy. And again, then if I wanted to undo this, I can undo, and if I needed to redo, Control Y. Boom. So that's how both of those work. Paste without formatting, which is Control Shift V, or potentially Control Alt V, and then also Control Y for redo after you've undone something. The next thing, get rid of this, is something if you've ever used QuickBooks Desktop. If you ever have a problem with your software, it often happens after you have placed the box somewhere and you don't have access to the license code and the product code and What else is there? Sometimes there's an activation email. There's a ton of things that sometimes you'll need access to recover. And if you don't have that, or someone else set it up, or you don't know where the box is, it's a super pain in the butt. So what's better is to, before you lose access to QuickBooks, is press the F2 button. And that will give you everything you need to know about your QuickBooks. So you'll have your license number, you have the product in very specific detail, you have how many user licenses, when it was installed, the product number, you can all different kinds of file things, and pretty much everything you would ever want to know about it. And if the best thing you want to do is get this before anything happens, and then take a screenshot of it and like email it to yourself and save it somewhere. Because if the computer that you saved it on crashes, you have a problem. If QuickBooks crashes and everything else is fine, you're fine because you still have this picture. But if you were to not send it to yourself and something happens to the actual computer that it's running on, you're still stuck and you still don't have the information you need. So the best bet is to capture a picture of this and send it to yourself so you have it in case you need it. So that's the QuickBooks shortcut. It's not exactly a keyboard shortcut, but if you don't know about it, it's really hard to find that information. Okay, last but not least, I got 3 things in Photoshop. So here's an image. It's only at 45% because it's a very big image I took with my cell phone. And if I hit Ctrl Alt I, that gives me the image size. So you can tell what size this is. I can change the image size. The reason you want image size is, like, say you're trying to format something for a website or pretty much anywhere, and you want it to be a certain size, or you need it to be smaller so that the size of the image as far as the file size is less. I can change that here. So I just type it in. Because this has the lock, that means it's going to keep the height and width ratio the same, and I can say OK, and it's going to resize that. And now if I did 100%, you would see this is 100% now. Okay, so I'm going to change that back to 45% so that I can undo. And then if I were to change the canvas size, so the canvas size is Ctrl Alt C. So canvas size is very different from image size. When I changed that image size, you saw the whole image, and you still saw the whole image. It was just smaller. If I change the canvas size, the actual image will be cut or added to if I were to make it bigger. Same with the image. If I do the image size, if I go smaller, it's going to shrink, but you still see the whole thing. If I go bigger, it's going to get bigger. You still see the whole image. With Canvas, that is not the case. I'm either adding to the outside edge of the image here, or I am cutting parts of the image off. So I'll be dramatic with this and cut this in half, just so you can see what that would look like. And it's going to say, like, are you sure? Because you're really cutting off some of this canvas. I'm going to say yes. Boom. Now I've lost a whole bunch of the image. You really only have a very small amount. So if I undo that, it looks like this. The last keyboard shortcut in Photoshop has to do with undo. So I just did Ctrl Z. If I do Ctrl Z again, it's going to undo the undo. So it's in essence just like the Ctrl Z and Ctrl Y in Word or other Office applications. It's in essence a toggle. So if you're trying to go back to like your original picture, say I made several changes and I'm trying to go backwards, this is me doing Ctrl Z back and forth. It's literally just undo and redo, undo and redo, undo and redo. You'll make yourself crazy trying to go backwards. What you really want is to step backward, which if you go up here and go edit, it's this one here, this step backward. And so you don't see it here because I don't have anything changed. Let me change the image to 1,000 pixels in width, and then I'll do the canvas and I'll cut it some. Let's cut the height this time for fun. I'm going to say proceed, and then I'm going to say let's blow it back up now. Just so you can see several changes. So now if I do Control Z, again, you see toggle, right? Does nothing. So if I do step backwards, Control Alt Z, it's going to go back, back, and back to original. So in Photoshop, undo is not the same as undo in an Office application. And that's important to know because if you're trying to really undo and go backwards, you actually have to do step backwards. And so that's under Edit, step backward or forward, and you can also use the keyboard shortcut Control Alt Z, and that's what I use. So that's definitely Photoshop is very different, and if you're working in it and you're trying to undo something and you don't understand the difference between those two, it can be really frustrating. But that is the last of the 7 keyboard shortcuts that you are probably unaware of, but that are in pretty common programs. So hopefully these were somewhat helpful for you, and thanks for watching.